See these bags right here? This is part of my super secretive trick to keeping cold sensitive trees alive through a cold, cold night. All those bags I just showed you were full of thrift store sheets. We throw these all over our gardens, but we particularly use them over sensitive trees like our citrus trees. We live in an area where you can grow satsumas. However, when the trees are young, if they get a night down in the teens, that can be very, very damaging. It can kill the tree all the way down to the ground, and we're not going to let that happen because we have some one-year-old trees in the yard. So I'm going to take these and I'm going to show you what we do. And it's not just covering them with a sheet. There's more. So much more. Well, actually, very slightly more. Very, very slightly more. But it's a really important kind of slightly. This is the second part of the equation. As you can see here, we have a barrel. This is a 30-gallon barrel. A 55-gallon would be better, but all of my 55 gallons are out in the greenhouse. I'm going to cover it up so mosquitoes don't get in there. Here's a little tree. What is this one? Let's see. Pumpkin mandarin. So this tree is known to be cold hardy down into the teens, but when a tree is little, look at this. Look at this little teeny trunk. This can freeze right through. This is rootstock right here, so we don't want that growing. What'll happen is this cold hardy rootstock beneath the ground, this is a trifoliate orange rootstock, will live, but everything above this graft right here will die if you get a nasty cold night, especially if it's been in the 80s or so. Here, it says cold hardiness, 40 degrees to 15 degrees Fahrenheit. What does that even mean? 40 degrees to 15 degrees. Who even knows? But the idea is this tree here has that cold hardiness of being able to go down into the teens, but it doesn't have that cold hardiness if it has been in the 80s and then it drops down into the 20s. And that sort of thing happens here, and particularly not if it drops down below the 20s down into the teens. Something in the 20s can hurt this tree if it's actively growing. It can freeze it. And if it gets down into the teens and it's tiny like this, it can freeze right through, kill the entire top, and then next year you've got trifoliate orange growing back from the bottom. You do not want that. The cold hardiness of these trees goes up significantly as they get bigger, which is something to remember. The cold hardiness increases as a tree increases in size. So you see this magnolia back here. That magnolia right there, if it was itty bitty, the cold hardiness would be much lower than it is right now. It would take a lot to freeze this tree, especially when you look at this canopy up here. That canopy also helps keep the cold from coming down around the base of the tree, which is the second thing you need to know. First of all, small trees, as they get bigger, gain cold hardiness. So something that might not be able to take 32 degrees when it's a baby tree might be able to take 32 degrees when it is a larger tree, and it might be able to take 20-something degrees when it is a very large tree. The larger it gets, the better. And if you look here, this tree is also underneath the canopy of this magnolia tree. That is for a purpose. I put this tree, that tree with that barrel over there, and that tree with that barrel over there, all underneath the edge of the canopy of the magnolia, which keeps the cold overnight that comes down from above. It rolls out the outside of this canopy like this, and it allows this tree to benefit from kind of the blanket effect of having this canopy over the top, and it being an evergreen canopy is even better. Yeah, the tree does get a little more shade than it would normally, and it does have root competition, but this is a balance. The idea is to give it a little bit of care in the winter, which is more important to me. If I have it right out in the middle of a field, I'm gonna have to take more care of it. So all that to say, why the barrel? We've gotten to that point. We've got a little bit of canopy. We've got a tree that we're trying to grow bigger. Once it grows bigger, we don't need to worry about it, right? Yes, but right now, this barrel is providing thermal mass. This is 30 gallons of water, which takes a lot of energy to freeze. If we have a short freeze event, like the one that's coming up this next week, where it's going to be down to 15 degrees overnight, that's what's predicted. That short freeze event is going to take a lot of effort to freeze this water, right? So for all that water to freeze, you know, it might take a day or two of it just being exposed. But we're not going to just expose it. We also throw a sheet over both the tree and the barrel, and then we pin the sheet down to the ground around it with some bricks, logs, whatever we have. And that way you have this space heater right here next to this tree. The barrel additionally is placed on the north side of the tree. You see we have the southern sun here. Southern sun. So the northern winds and everything, I think it helps a little bit. So we put it on the north side of the tree. We cover the entire thing, put bricks around it. Now you have this space heater. This is not going to work for you guys that are way far north where this entire thing would just turn into a block of ice. But here we don't usually have temperatures below freezing for more than 24 hours or so. So having a barrel like this is extremely effective. Extremely effective, much more effective than simply just covering the tree. Most people will cover their trees with a sheet, try to hold the warmth of the ground in around the tree, try to keep the frost off of the leaves. But when you put this in here too, it's like having a space heater. This is starting out at probably 60, 70 degrees overnight. It's slowly dropping, but it's not getting down to freezing, and it's radiating warmth out next to the tree. This is a great extra bonus, and it keeps the trees from freezing for a lot longer. A friend of mine planted some satsuma trees around the same time I did. As a matter of fact, we bought them at the same time, and his trees got damaged and killed, some of them, because of how cold it got last year. But I was fortunate enough to have some 55-gallon drums that I had put next to mine, so I didn't just cover them, I actually put the drums next to them. And then when I uncovered the trees, all of them had no damage except for one tree where a couple of leaves had kind of been sticking out the side of where we had tied the sheet up. This stick right here, this dead stick, is a pigeon pea planted out in our food forest area. And as you can see, there's no cover up above. So that's why it looks like this. It's just a stick. Right here is a tiny little pigeon pea that is growing underneath the magnolia tree that I was just standing next to. And it has no damage at all from multiple nights that have gone below freezing. It is here, it is even on the north side of the tree, but being underneath the canopy and being next to this trunk makes a huge difference. So keep this in mind. If you can balance the sunlight needs of your trees with the cold protection of a canopy, it makes a very big difference. Living in climates that are on the border of tropical and temperate for some years taught us a lot about keeping trees alive, keeping temperate trees that bloom early from losing their blooms, and keeping citrus trees that were marginal from freezing to death. We even managed to grow a key lime outside in zone 8/9, which we are told is impossible, but we were able to do it with a little bit of zone pushing nerd science stuff. But just for the basics that you've learned in this video, this will help you keep a satsuma tree alive, at least a small tree. A larger tree, if it gets really cold for long enough, it will kill it. You may have to do something else like run irrigation on it or get some smudge pots or something like that. But this barrel next to the trunk method has worked so well for us for so many years, both in North Florida and here in Lower Alabama. I want you to try it and use it. Makes a big difference, particularly on little trees that are very susceptible to cold. So I hope you enjoyed that. Hope it's useful to you. If you want to learn a whole bunch of nerdy plant zone pushing techniques for growing plants outside of their natural range, I wrote a book a few years ago that was not very popular because it was written for nerds. It's called Push the Zone, The Good Guide to Growing Tropical Plants Beyond the Tropics. So if that appeals to you, if you're like a high IQ, geeky experimenter type, and you want to see what you can push out of its zone, Push the Zone is for you. So I'll put a link to that below. Thanks for watching. Catch you all later. Be careful through the cold. And until next time, may your thumbs always be green.